For the public, I didn't
Tim,
bring
can I
enough for
have
everyone.
those?
Yes, I have one back.
Yep.
I'll just, these proposed amendments I've drafted in response to what I believe are the community's, many members of the community's concerns about what happens in the next 5 and 10 years in Wilmington. The first two, the first is taken from a previous North Elba code with the numbers. The North Elba numbers were much higher. The $8,000 number was a number that a previous town board, I guess at this point it's 2 town boards ago, in 2022 agreed on as a board. As the sense of the majority of the board was that 8,000 was appropriate. The second proposed amendment is taken from the Walmart versus Planning Board of the Town of North Elba case. And believe it or not, that's a known case in the zoning world and in the land use world. That's somewhat of a landmark case. And the Town of North Elba's Planning Board denied Walmart's application, and their decision was upheld on appeal. So the two most important parts two parts of the previous North Elba code that the court relied on in upholding the planning board's decision are in proposed amendment 2. Proposed amendment 3 is from, they're basically adopted from Wilmington's previous land use code, which was repealed and replaced in 2013. And they relate to, they're in response to the concerns I've heard about clear cutting and unsightly negative visual impacts in the community and negative impacts on neighboring property owners. They're close to what was in the previous, they're almost verbatim from the previous Wilmington zoning code. I did water it down a little. I changed the old Wilmington code had in the first line, ensure that all approved projects. I watered it down by changing it to all approved commercial projects. And the old Wilmington code was 20 feet of vegetative buffer. I changed that to 30. The fourth proposed amendment is simply in response to complaints we've received about overflowing dumpsters and unkept dumpsters and dumpsters visible from the roadway. I have lived near an overflowing dumpster, and it certainly does make a negative impact on the neighbors because wind exists and animals exist. And I didn't really enjoy picking up other people's trash because they couldn't maintain their dumpsters. I didn't find that delightful. So that is a brief summary of the proposed amendments. I'm in favor of them.
Thank you. Darren, you're next.
I guess I'll take them one by one and just give my thoughts. So as far as the 8,000 square feet and 40,000 square feet in all buildings, and then it's saying that that also includes exterior space for sale and storage of merchandise. So my concern with this is Wilmington has talked for years about attracting different various businesses, whether it be, a larger hotel to come here someday, or, different apartment buildings. So what does retail trade business actually mean? Does that mean if we have a Holiday Inn want to come here and because it's 8,000 square feet, even though it's a floor area and it's 3 stories high, is that 8,000 square feet footprint? Does that 8,000 square feet altogether? I'm not sure what that means on some of that stuff. So I think we need to have a discussion of what 8,000 square feet actually means and what that means when it says retail trade. Do hotels and things like that count? Because what is not included here is you had on one of the things that Carl had, and there's a couple businesses in town like Whiteface Corners, once everything is added together, is greater than the 8,000 square feet. And I would hate to see Wilmington basically just say, oh, it's not allowed here, so you're not welcome, without having a possibility to have a discussion on that. Number 2 of that, as far as no material adverse impact, I get the purpose of that. However, I would like to see it a little bit more detailed, because I basically feel that that can be made a case no matter what it is. So if it's a business selling ice cream cones or a business selling cars, the neighboring property could have a material adverse effect. So I feel like based on that clause, it doesn't matter what business it is, it could possibly have an adverse effect on a neighboring property. So who's to say that it has an adverse effect? And is it going to be just to our planning board, or is there going to be an outside agency that we hire as far as determining what the adverse impact is? Because everybody's definition of an adverse impact is different. Number 3, visual screening and impacts. Again, I get the purpose of it. 30 square feet of trees and vegetation, depending on where it is not that much. So sometimes when you're left 30 feet of brush and shrubs along the edge of a road, it could look worse than if it was cleared, new lawn put in, and then some new planting. So, I mean, the idea of it is good, but when you're saying natural vegetation left in its natural unimproved state,
or improved, not unimproved, or improved.
Well, again, left in its natural state regardless, that 30 feet could look worse than if it was just taken out and replanted. So I understand the screening impact, but I don't know if I'm necessarily in favor of saying that it left natural. And then what about other places in town where there is no natural screening? So let's just say the property that I can think of across from like the Country Bear, there's that field area. If there was a business that was right there, there is no natural screening. So that business could get away without any screening, where a business 100 feet up the road that has trees in front of it has to leave screening. So I don't understand how we're going to decide the differences there. Number 4, again, totally understand the dumpsters. But what do we do in instances like Fratelli's, where it's a fairly small piece of property and there is no way for them to put a dumpster 20 feet away from any property lines or public roadways, unless they put the dumpster in the center of their parking lot? Again, we got to have exceptions for situations like that, because there is no other place to put a dumpster on a property like that, except within those areas. So, again, totally understand the purpose. I wouldn't want necessarily a dumpster next to me, but I think we have to have a realistic expectation depending on the property and the business, if that's feasible or not.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Laura?
I'm in favor of the 8,000. I think the 40,000 is, I mean, I can't even fathom that much real estate, but I don't know where that number came from. I don't think.
It came from my brain
Okay,
as, the North Elba number was higher. So I
Okay.
just tried, I don't remember exactly how I came up with that number. It was 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
okay.
Yep.
I understand about the materially adverse, that doesn't roll off the tongue there. But, you know, I think we do need to have something in there that there is some way for someone to plead a case, you know, as far as whether or not that they feel, and materially adverse means financially impacting. Am I incorrect with that?
No, that's basically correct.
Okay,
In law school, I asked more than once for a definition of what materially means because they use that phrase incessantly. I could never get it great. It either means financially or it means something that would make you or a reasonable person do something differently. That's the definition I got.
so I'm in favor of that language just because it does give somebody a way to interpret it. And as we've seen, there's a lot of, in their applications, people can add as much as they'd like to say to plead their case. So I think that that would be helpful to have. But then again, you know, what I find unappealing is not necessarily what somebody else would find unappealing. So, you know, it all depends on who is in that situation. The number 3, I know what you're saying, Darren, but I think anything left in place is better than having what we have had happen in some of the new developments and businesses where we don't have as much screening as it would have been more beneficial to have things not so seen. So I'm in favor of the screening and setbacks. And I don't think it needs, you know, it could just be, I know what you're saying as far as natural, but a pre-existing thing doesn't need to have,
Sorry.
you know, no, you're fine.
Okay.
Pre-existing properties that don't have the trees, obviously we're not going to have them, you know, we wouldn't ask them to, if it's in place, then leave it if possible. But look at what we did with the KOA. You know, they took down a whole bunch of trees along the sidelines, and then there were trees falling because they disrupted the root system. And then we have screening that we had to put a fence in place because the neighbors complained about it. So I think if we're, you know, there's so many different things that we have made exceptions for historically, and that we are appeasing people because they're disgruntled with something. And, you know, I think 30 feet is a tiny little bit that you could have something set back from. And then the dumpsters, I just want clarification. Do you mean the big metal dumpsters? Because it says waste receptacles, which are inclusive in my mind of those like 2 bins that you have. And those can't, I mean, personally speaking, I have them. I'm in favor of the larger dumpsters having screening, but you have to bring those out every day and put them by the side of or once a week and put it by the side of the road. So I don't necessarily know. I think the larger dumpsters that are more, you know, in one spot would be something that you could enforce the screening, and I'm in favor of that.
Thank you.
I'm in favor of the dumpsters, I agree with that, but I'm,
Hold on, let me start your comment. Are you finished?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Gina.
I'm in favor of the dumpsters. I just don't know about the 20-foot setback, because some places don't have that. I think that's where we're gonna run into the problem, is the property line setback. Because a lot of places and businesses and stuff are borderline to other places. You know, so I'm not quite sure how we're going to address that, because I don't think a lot of places have that ability to be off that line.
I think
Hold on, Chief. It's not a dialogue. She gets
I
to
think
talk.
that's
This is the
gonna
rules.
be one of them. The 30-foot of natural vegetation, I think the 30 feet, I don't, more, 30 foot is fine, but I'm just wondering if there's a way of, redoing that with screening somehow, of some type of screening of not as much natural, just screening when they're doing that, because sometimes, like Dan said, You have the dead trees, you have logs, you have, it depends on where you are of what's proposed at that road. It may not look as good as a new lawn would when they go to build something. So maybe as far as a nice screening there, instead of just natural vegetation, the screening 30 foot from the road. It's back to number one, 800 square foot. I just wanted to touch base that on that sheet that Carl had, 800 square feet is 600, Overshawn and Lake Placid is 8,400. So just to give people the size grade of what we were talking about on number one, it should not exceed 8,000 square foot. That is, oh, okay. Okay. Well, are you telling me?
I don't want to interrupt your time.
Okay, I'm done. That's all I'm saying.
I was just saying that's just the inside space,
inside,
and
yeah.
this is saying 8,000,
In total.
including outside.
Outside, okay, yeah. So that's just the inside. Okay, yeah, I was looking stereo.
You got more
Yeah.
time, Tina, keep going.
So that's all I was just saying. So even, okay, so ward number outside is 9,300. So that's size wise. And that's just the main part of ward number, the main building.
Yep.
So I was just wanted to point that out to everybody as size wise. And those are the only points that I wanted to bring up that I had. That I wanted to share.
Thank you. Okay, 2 minutes, very good.
Do we have any circle back, or are we just?
No, it's my turn. Okay, so, so one of the things, I mean, I think there's some misunderstanding of sort of what I was sort of envisioning when we asked that the planning board undertake some of this kind of work for the town board. Is because the town board, as you can see, is going through a series of factual questions that town boards can do. But if they have a committee and a planning board who could undertake some of that stuff, you know, it provides coverage for the town board. So the town board can sit there and listen to these things. So for us, one of my concerns, and I've said it since I started talking about the comprehensive plan, is it's important that the community be careful about the changes it makes to what used to be a comprehensive plan. And they have to make sure that things fit, because communities can get accused of doing, like they call it, spot zoning, because it doesn't seem to be following a plan. And what I'm sometimes, I'm often concerned about on behalf of, from the town's point of view, is not undergoing another set of litigation circumstances that we went through the past year with the beach in the town and the attorney's fees, because these kinds of things aren't covered by insurance, and the town would be required to pay for its attorney to defend what they're up to. So the more evidence that we've really put some thought into it, it's a good idea. And so it seems to me that the next step, I'll just throw it out there and then I'm finished with my discussion, is if the board wants to go forward with these as submitted by the planning board, then we need to have them drafted into like a local law format. And then we would submit them to our legal counsel for review and comment and opinion. That's my suggestion of the next step. If we're interested in moving this forward in that process, that's the next step. If we could go back and ask either us, or we ask, it would probably be us at this point, to go and try to fit this in with what kind of exceptions we may want to see. One of the things here, Tim, the language was, the planning may in their describe, the planning board, so this is amendment 3, paragraph 2. The planning board and zoning board of appeals may in their discretion require additional measures to provide screening. They may also loosen the measures. They're going to face a situation where additional measures may mean we're not going to follow this to the strict letter of what this law says because of their particular situation. So those kinds of changes, may seem wise for the town. But so drafting and things like that. So that's my suggestion. So some of these things I think are terrific ideas. I think that, you know, whether we deal with dumpsters through like a local law permitting kind of deal, like junk cars, you know, where it's not zoning specifically, it's something else that we're doing for public health. That's an option. But this is what been suggested to us, and we should take some steps, but we'll have to discuss how to do that. Name it. So I'm finished. Now, okay, so I didn't provide for this, but anybody questions for anyone around here? You have a question?
Nope, Darren wanted.
Darren wanted to bring something.
I just wanted to say a couple things. I mean, I'm not generally negative towards any of these in particular, totally, but I do agree with a couple of Tina's comments. Like the 30 feet of screening would be fine because there's just certain situations where, again, natural vegetation is going to look worse than if it was a nice new planted screening. You know, you had brought up the KOA now, and, you know, it's saying from the public street or highway, and the trees that they took down were all well beyond the 30 feet buffer. So there's certain situations where that's not going to work. You know, and then there's been comment, and I just do want to say this for the record. I have not got any financial impact from KOA. I have not worked for them, so I'm not saying this out of any financial circumstances because that would be the next thing. I have not got any work from the KOA out of any of these projects. But for example, the Fox Farm project, you know, one of the stipulations of reopening from the health department was the septics had to be upgraded. It was just fact. And in order to put the new septic system in the way the Department of Health wanted, there had to be trees taken down. Nobody wanted the trees taken down, but in order to upgrade the septic system the way the Department of Health wanted, there had to be trees taken down. It went through an engineer, it went through a review process of both the planning board, the health department, and KOA, and that's where they determined the septic system was going. So it wasn't a matter of clear cutting for extra sites, it was a clear cutting for basically a way to protect the town because the septic system is being upgraded. So certain things, you know, although they seem great on paper, don't always allow for things the way they need to be done. You know, the same way with, you know, the 40,000, 8,000, I get it. Take a business like Hazelton Lumber. I mean, if you look at their yard and how sprawling it is, and it's not even on there, if we pass these things and there was ever, you know, Hazelton shut down and then another business was to come in, basically we're saying we're not going to allow that business to open in our town because every time it changes ownership or if it was shut down for a period of time, it would have to be reapproved. And based on these amendments, without any type of exceptions, that business would never be allowed again in town of Wilmington.
Thank you, Darren. Comments from anybody?
Yeah,
Laura, too.
go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Favor, at first I thought you were going one place with your comments, and then you really turned it around and went in a different direction, and I'm appreciative of the direction that your comments suggest. As far as I understand this this fear that whatever business that would be beneficial to the town that is larger than 8,000 square feet would be prohibited, but it's not, and that's why we have the zoning board, right? That's why there's a built-in mechanism into the whole code for someone to get an exception, and that's
But it doesn't say that here.
It doesn't have to. That's the whole law. Like, I don't think, in fact, actually, a previous draft of these amendments, I had said larger operations are able to apply for a variance, and the lawyer said, don't put that in there. Like, that's obvious. That's just redundant. There's no need to have that language in there. I don't think it's necessary. If our council says it is necessary to put that sentence in there, then of course I have no objection. But I think it's heavily implied with the whole zoning code and the existence of the zoning board of appeals, and that's their job, is to hear appeals and hear variances. Retail trade, this, all this language has worked for other towns, has worked for Wilmington. It's held up in court. I believe that retail trade means what we think it means when we hear that phrase. However, if when a land use attorney reviews these, they think that it should be phrased differently so it doesn't apply to hotels, then of course I would be fine with adjusting any language. And then just the materially adverse impact. Our current code uses the phrase undue adverse impact. And so that language is in our code, I think, 3 times with site plan review and special use permits. Permits will not be permitted if there's an undue adverse impact. That phrase is vague. Materially adverse is more precise. It's a little stronger. I don't think it's a big change. I think it's making the zoning code a little stronger and a little tighter.
What I was referring to is in the amendment where it says adjoining property not in the same ownership. I wasn't referring to the public street. So that language is in there. That's what I was referring to, not the roadway. And then the DEC, I meant to mention this, but there's a lot happening today. The DEC has its own program or policy that you can utilize to review the aesthetic, how to assess and mitigate the visual and aesthetic impacts. And it's this really beautiful document that you can utilize to help clear up how that you would interpret something that's materially or clearly adversely impacting something. So it makes it a little bit easier because it is such a muddied, just, how that somebody would make it, the difference of interpretation, it kind of allows the people to clear it up. And that's from the DEC. And I have that document, but I forgot to mention it. That's it.
It's the same with the the same with the abnormally small lots that would need some kind of, that couldn't put a dumpster 20 feet away from the property line. They too would have a variance mechanism built into the law. I mean, that's why people apply for variances, because they want to do something outside of what the code allows. Yeah, and I actually agree with Favor's suggestion to allow the planning board maybe a little more discretion with the screening. But I do think there's a lot of discretion built in. And it's just general guidelines. So I'm not sure that they have to be necessarily interpreted or applied every time. They're somewhat vague. I think that there's space there for individuals with unique circumstances, and there's space there for discretion. And then if there isn't, then that's where you apply for a variance.
Thank you. 7 o'clock. Perfect. Well done. Thank you so much. So just generally speaking, I think what we're going to try to do, our next step is I outlined what I suggested, and maybe we're going to communicate in an email to each other about what each person thinks our next step should be. Because we'd have to put it in a form so that the lawyer isn't charging us to write up the local law.